Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Devin Sears. I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Alani, and today we are talking about boosting your WordPress site speed, a beginner's guide to faster performance. If you're building your first WordPress website, it's possible that you're not pleased with how quickly your website is loading. And oftentimes when that happens, you want to look into accelerating that load time and making sure that your customers are having a good user experience when they're on your website. So today, we're going to give you a walkthrough on the basics, understanding load time, how to improve load time, and all that comes with it. So before we jump into that, as I mentioned before, we're joined by Alani. He's one of our software engineers. He's spoken at multiple WordCamps. He's joined us on webinars before. Very, very, very smart guy. We're thrilled to have him with us today, and I'm excited to hear your experience and knowledge on this matter. As always, I'm Devin Sears, Senior Field Marketing Manager. I will be your host. I'll actually be off camera for most of the webinar today. I'll be responding to comments as he's presenting about today's topic. But before we get into things, if you can hear us, find the chat and drop, let us know where you're tuning in from. We always love seeing how far away people are joining us from or how close. I'm out of Austin, Texas, and I always love hearing that I've got some fellow Austinites that are also joining the webinar. If you have questions throughout this, you can drop them in the chat. We prefer if you find the Q&A tab, which should be right next to the chat. It just allows us to have threaded responses. So if we need to have a little bit of a back and forth, depending on what your question is, that allows us to keep things a little bit more organized. Occasionally, if we see a question in the chat, we might move it to the Q&A tab. So don't worry, we're not deleting your question. We're just moving it somewhere so that we can have a threaded response. If you have any questions or issues on the technical side, the best thing to do is just to close the browser and rejoin the webinar. If you do have any issues that prevent you from tuning in long-term, we will be recording this, and we will be sending out the recording within 24 to 48 hours after we finish today. So everyone that has signed up will get a recording. We always get that question. Otherwise, drop your questions in the chat or the Q&A section, and I will do my best to answer them throughout the webinar. Any questions that I don't know the answer to or that I think might be beneficial to everyone participating, I will hold, and we will have a Q&A session towards the end. So thank you all for joining us. We're thrilled to have you here. Alani, most importantly, take it away, my friend. This is your time.
All right. Thank you so much, Devin. So hello, everyone. My name is Alani. I am a software engineer here at Bluehost. I have been with Bluehost for about 8 years. I wore many different hats, worked in many different places in Bluehost. I started all the way in tech support as web advisor, worked as a web designer, building websites for customers. I was a design or web design trainer or supervisor for a while as well, training and helping designers help our customers. That's all before I got to engineering. And I would say in every place I worked at or every position, this topic always came up. Website optimization, WordPress website optimization, slow website, optimizing website. And really, it just speaks for the importance of the topic and the commonality of the issue. So hopefully we'll try to take a look at that today. So here's what we're going to be covering today. So we're going to be covering basics of site speed, identifying problems that are slowing down your website, image optimization, assets optimization, caching, monitoring the performance of the website website long term, and also like just a summary and few next steps if the above is not working. And we'll have the time, if we have some time for questions and answers. So here's the first part, just understanding the basics of site speed. So there's a few things that can affect a website speed, especially a WordPress website speed. So it's hosting quality, and I'd say the hosting quality as well as the hosting type. So you've probably seen before, like cloud hosting, e-commerce hosting, shared hosting, all these things can matter for the type of website that you have. Images and assets. So if you have a lot of images on the website, unoptimized images, that can affect your website speed, and we're going to take a look at that thoroughly today. And also assets, if you're using themes and plugins, the assets that they carry with them that can also slow down the website. If you have too many plugins on your website, also that can slow down the website. So make sure you only have the plugins that are being actually used on the website. External services can slow down the website. So like stuff like Google Ads, Google Analytics, Facebook Pixels, and all these like tracking metrics and stuff, they can affect the website speed. Also, another topic is database optimization. Now, the impact of site speed on your website is massive, because like if you have a fast website, the overall experience, the user experience, the visitor experience will be better, right? The website is loading fast. They're seeing the content very quickly. So it's also going to lower the bounce rate. So the bounce rate is a metric that search engines use to evaluate your website. And it's basically how fast somebody exited or bounced out of your website after they clicked on the link when they enter your website through like a search result or even through the URL. And basically it indicates that there's something wrong, especially if they didn't really scroll or swipe down on the website. They just entered the website and left quickly. So to the search engine, it looks like there's something wrong with the website. And the biggest driver for a bounce experience is a website that's just stuck spinning. So if you have the spinner running for 3-4 seconds, chances are this visitor will just exit out immediately because they don't want to sit there and wait, Also, it will improve the conversion rate. So if they're not, stuck looking at a spinner and the experience is fluid, most likely they are going to buy the product that you're selling on the website or the service or whatever end goal you want them to achieve. And all these things will actually lead to a higher search ranking. But first, we need to make sure the website is loading for the customers. Now, before we actually dive into fixing problems, we need to identify these problems that are slowing down the website. So luckily, there's a lot of tools out there that can help scan your website and point out a few things or metrics that you can use to evaluate your website speed and also the problems that are affecting your website speed. So the main one really, I would say it's like an industry standard, is Google Page Speed Insights. It's a completely free tool developed and maintained by Google. We're gonna take a look at that tool a little bit more in depth here in a second. But you would just put your website URL or the page that you're trying to scan on the application or on the tool, and it will evaluate your website based on certain metrics. And you can take that and try to work on the things that are causing the website to slow down, or the issues, try to improve the speed. GTmetrix, it's also one of those like free and paid tools, like a freemium. It's also a great tool. Pingdom tools. So I like this tool just because it's a little bit simpler to understand and digest, but there's also a paid aspect to it. And then there's also Chrome Lighthouse. It is a built in the browser tool that scans your website. It's built into the browser. I'd say this is more geared toward developers, engineers, and advanced users. But at the end of the day, the Chrome Lighthouse will give you the same exact results as Page Speed Insights. So here's the Page Speed Insights by Google. So the URL to visit the application or this website is pagespeed.web.dev. And you are greeted with this input field. You would put the page that you're trying to scan, or the website, or any URL on the internet you could put on there, and it's going to scan it. And you would put analyze, and the tool will spin for a little bit, trying to analyze your website by running certain metrics on it. And then once the analyzing is done, this is what you will see. So the first thing here, as you can see, obviously there's the date and the time it took the analyzing, but also there is the mobile and desktop. So believe it or not, your website can have different speed and different results on mobile versus desktop. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Next, these are like the few different metrics or a few different results, or like a top level results of your website. Performance, accessibility, best practices in SEO. We're not going to cover accessibility, best practices in SEO. We're just going to focus on the first one, performance, but it uses a metrics out of 100 to evaluate your website. And I would say really anything above 90 is great. But right below that, the metrics, that's the different metrics that it would use to evaluate your website performance. And in the next slide, we'll take a look at the individual items here to see what they mean and what they represent. So the first one here, I think one of the most important metrics is the first content paint. So this is the time it takes for the first piece of content to appear on the screen. So we've all seen that before. We went to a website and it took a second or two to load, but we start seeing the text appearing, the images loading slowly. But this is the time it took for the user to see the first interaction or the first thing on the page. It's just basically telling the page, hey, we're responding to you. So it's a more of an assurance thing that Google look out for. So before we get to the time blocking or total blocking time, let's look at the speed index, which is the third one here on the left side. So this is a calculation of the average time at which visible parts of the page are rendered, providing an overall sense of load speed. So that's when I would say the page is almost like, in terms of skeleton and style, has fully rendered. So the user is like a little bit assured that, hey, the website has loaded. There's not a lot of issues. However, the total blocking time, this is the total amount of time a page is blocked from responding to a user input during loading. So we've all probably also seen that before, where you go to a website, everything is loading or everything is loaded, but you're scrolling down on the page and nothing is responding to your input. No scrolling. If it's on mobile, you're swiping down and there's nothing is really responding, because something is blocking your interaction. Something is still loading in the background, but we are not aware of it. The browser is not aware of it, and that is a big problem. And search engines and Google specifically, they really dislike that because it's just a bad user experience. When the page is loaded, we should have as little time blocking or total blocking time as possible. And that's for 50 milliseconds to Google. It's great because the user likely will not notice that. Next, we have the large content paint. So this is the time it takes for the largest visible content to fully load, which basically really means like this is the time the website fully loaded. What that means, so the largest content. So again, we visited websites before and you're scrolling down, and as you're scrolling, you're seeing an image is like, it's too heavy and it's slowly loading, right? It's not bad, right? Because you can see it's an image, but it's just a bad user experience. That image can be optimized. So Google is factoring that. Even though the page is loaded, there's no more, blocking there. That image is still loading and it's just a bad user experience. And also we have the content layout shift. So this is the stability of a page by tracking how the elements of the website are unexpectedly shifting around. And this is a really massive one. And this number should be close to 0 as possible. And so you've probably all seen that. You go to read a blog post, let's say it's a medical blog post or whatever, sport, and then as you're scrolling down on the article or the post, you lost the paragraph that you're reading just because something now appearing instead of it. Especially it happens a lot with Google ads or ads in general. So you're reading something and something all of a sudden just takes its place as the page is loading, and that's content layout shift. And Google and search engines in general now really look down upon this. And when you scroll down a little bit further, this is like the diagnostics list. So each individual one will, represent a problem with the website, and solving that will automatically solve the metric items above. So for example, like the first one is saying, hey, the largest content paint, it's like an image on that website that I scanned is just too big, right? It's unoptimized. And when you expand that first item, it will actually tell you which image it is and why it's low, what's the resolution that the image loaded, and what it should be for that to be resolved. Now, here are some keys to a faster load time. So this is almost like best practices. We should always follow them when we build websites. So the first one is image optimization. So I would say the biggest driver for slow websites are unoptimized images. So we should always properly size our images to the rendered container, where we should always serve them in the correct format, and also compress the images and make them web compliant before uploading them to the website. Assets optimization. So the website is built of 3 components: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So if done improperly, these assets can slow down your website. So there's ways to minify them and optimize them, and we're going to take a look at that. Also, caching is important. Caching is like memorizing copies of the website to serve them faster. And there's like page caching, asset caching, browser caching, server, and we're going to take a look at that as well. But first, we're going to take a look at image optimization. And this is like, again, the most important thing when it comes to website speed. So identifying unoptimized images. So it's usually images with large image file sizes. So something in, more than 512 kilobytes or a megabyte. And I see that a lot when I optimize websites. I take a look at it, and then it's the images. There's 3-4 different images that are extremely high resolutions that you can tell they got just imported from a stock photography website or straight from the phone camera, and they're just too big to be used on a web page. Also, improperly sized images, so images that don't fit their container. Uncompressed images carry metadata that's unnecessary for the web. Also, incorrect image file format, and we're going to take a look at each one of those items in depth here in a second. So here's an example. So we have a website. It's actually that same website that we scanned, and the largest content paint on that website, the issue that caused the website to at 2 seconds of load time, was this image right here. So as we can see here, the rendered image size has a height of 630 pixels by 550. But if we actually take a look at the uploaded image, the image that's being used, not the one that the browser rendered, the one that's being uploaded to the website, the browser that used it as a source, it has a resolution of 1396 by 1600. The format is PNG, and the file size is 2.5 megabyte, so 2500 kilobytes. And also it added about 2 seconds of total load time to the website. So the website loaded in about 2.6 seconds, I think, or 2.8, but the total loading time took about 4.5 seconds or something like that. So first, we're going to properly sizing that image. So again, I'm going to go back a few slides to look at the render size. So here's the render size, but then here is the original image. So there's a lot of real estate on that image, the one that's kind of like darkened here. So that should really be cropped out. So again, cropping the image to the rendered size, and also scaling down the image to the rendered size, which is 550 width by 630 height. That all will trim down a lot of the, let's say, unused real space or real estate of that image. So just by doing that, the image, after those simple edits, went down from 2,500 kilobytes or 2.5 megabytes, immediately went down to 600 kilobytes. So almost down by 76%. So that's a massive improvement by just cropping the image and scaling down the size. And you can use literally any image optimization tool. Even the most basic one will have the ability to resize and crop your images. So other tools that are popular, imageresizer.com, BeFunky, Adobe Photoshop, Figma. Again, from a simple tool to the more advanced ones, they all have that ability. Converting the format to WebP. So WebP, it's not a new format anymore, but it's not as common as the other ones. But basically, it's a format that was initially made by Google. It is the most web-friendly image format. So we should always convert images to WebP from PNG. So for this specific image, we're going to convert it from PNG, which is really known to carry a lot of size with it. It's a format that's probably ideal for like cameras, for a photo editing application, just because it carries a lot of metadata with it, specifically for those applications. But for the web, we don't need any of that stuff, and WebP is a lot more optimized for that. And it also preserves transparency. So if you have a logo or something that should have a transparent background, WebP can preserve transparency. So WebP images also are up to 40% smaller while retaining the same exact quality in most situations when converting them from PNG, JPEG, or whatever other format. And we can see that after we converted that image from PNG, to WebP, the size went down by 86%. So now we're looking at 360 kilobytes. And you can use tools like Cloud Convert to convert the image, or you can use tools on your website, like plugins that you install, like WP Smush, Images to WebP, or EWWW. Those are WordPress plugins. And then what's nice about them, they have the ability to automatically convert the image. So you upload the image in PNG, and it will automatically convert it to WebP. Now compressing. So compressing is basically removing a lot of metadata and a lot of details from an image that is not really useful for a web page at all, but it's useful for, like I said, a camera or the photo editing application on the computer, like Photoshop, Figma, all that stuff. There's different types of compression, but lossless is a really good format. Lossless will retain the same exact quality while reducing the size. It will also remove metadata and other non-web related, image details from an image. And as we can see that after we compress the image, now the total size is 168 kilobytes. So it went down by a total of 93.2%. And you can use tools like tinypng.com to compress the image. Or you can use, again, WP Smush or other WordPress plugins that you install on your website, and they will automatically compress the image when you upload it to the website. So it's more of an automated process. Now, after cropping that image and resizing it and converting it to a P and compressing it, here is the image that I would say we should upload it to fix the largest content pane issue, or fix that image performance. So the resolution now, the final resolution is 550 pixel by 630. It is a WebP format. Total size is 168 kilobytes, down from 2,500. And this image added no significant added load time to the page. So we got that result. And that's how you identify image problems on the website. You scan the website, or you download these images and look at the size versus the render size, and run through compression tools and cropping and resizing. However, there's also tools, image optimization tools, that can automate that process. So Smush, WP Smush, is a WordPress plugin that you can install. It's free. EWWW and Imagify, you can install them on your website, and they can automatically convert images to WebP, and they can also convert them on the fly from like a PNG JPEG to WebP. Also, there are tools like Short Pixel, Bunny CDN, or Bunny.net, and Cloudflare. They're a little bit more unique, especially Short Pixel and Bunny. They have WordPress plugins and a CDN. So a CDN is a content delivery network. But really what they do, these images will work as a layer in front of your website, and they will handle image serving. So you can upload the image straight from your phone, straight from like a photography website, stock photography website, and they will handle resizing the image to the user viewport or the user screen. They will handle converting it to WebP. They will handle compressing it to the smallest possible to serve it for that particular user. So they will even customize it for, because the users have different screen sizes, different mobile phone sizes. So they will handle all that, and they will serve it from their hosting or their server rather than yours. So it even take a little bit of load out of that. Now, obviously, because it's the service, usually these services are paid, but the cost is rather low. It's a good option if you don't want to do image optimization at all, or if you already have a website with a lot of images that are unoptimized and you don't have the time to go back to all that. So it's a good tool to evaluate, to use those, image content delivery network. I personally used Short Pixel in the past, and it just made my life a lot easier. So assets optimization. So before we dive into assets and how you can optimize them, first we need to understand what are these assets. So the building blocks of a web page, the magic trio. So we have HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So HTML is the structure of a website. So this is like the foundation of a web page. HTML defines the structure and content, like headings, paragraph, images, and links. CSS represent the style. So CSS makes the content or the website look good by controlling colors, font, layouts, and visual effects, basically bringing style to the HTML content. So if you have a heading that on the page, or a title, HTML will have that title and will have the content of it. And then CSS will make it bold, will make it your favorite font or your favorite color. And JavaScript, or interactivity, basically it adds functionality, making the website interactive by handling actions like when somebody presses on a button or animation or data update. So if you go on a web page and there's like a promotion to sign up for their email listing and they'll give you 20% off via pop-up or a modal, likely that pop-up or modal is handled by JavaScript. So if we use a car analogy, this is a good way to break that down. So HTML represent the skeleton or the body of the car, and CSS represent the color, the style of the car, and also JavaScript is like the engine, the thing that makes it drive. So to optimize the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, there are a few different methods and options. So we have asset minification, we have combining assets, and we have deferring of assets. So I would say combining and deferring might require a lot of testing, but with any of those, you should always take a backup of your website, because especially if you're doing combining, few things might not be reversible. So if you combine assets, it will probably, again, every website is built different, but it might break certain parts of the website depending on how it's built. So it will be nice to have a backup that you can go back to and restore to go back to that point and not do that same mistake with combining. However, I would say combining is not as necessary as it used to be back in the day, and deferring as well. But combining is, it's not a thing that I would recommend anymore. It's just minifications and deferring. So asset minification. So minification is the process of removing unnecessary characters like spaces, comments, and line breaks from HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files. This reduction make the files smaller, allowing them to load faster without altering the functionality of the content. So by using minification, we cut down on file size, reduce load time, and enhance overall website performance, which leads to a better user experience. And here's an example in that figure that we have on the right side. So the original versus the minified. So the original is really how we build websites, or when we use a tool like Elementor or any other page builder to build a website. Generally, that's how the code is rendered. It's more of a human-friendly or human-readable layout. But as you can see, there's a lot of spaces between them, line breaks, and emptiness. So to the human eye, this is necessary so we can actually read it and digest it, right? But to the computers, it doesn't matter. The computer actually ignore all that space. But each pixel actually represents some sort of a size on that file that's being served to the user. So by minifying it, the computer will, it doesn't even have to ignore the spaces because there will be no more spaces, and also the size is reduced. Combining assets. So combining assets means merging multiple HTML, CSS, or JavaScript files into single files or one single file in extreme situations to reduce the number of requests made to the server. And the fewer requests lead to fewer load time, especially on high traffic pages. Now, again, the warning is combining files may cause conflicts if not managed carefully, potentially breaking parts of the website. That's why we should always take a backup before optimizing the website, especially when it comes to combining. But basically, I'll give you an example. So if you have a website built with Elementor or any other tool, and you have like a button, an image, a paragraph, a pop-up, each one of those elements has its own CSS file, has its own JavaScript file, right? And when a visitor is loading your website, their browser have to make individual calls to make a trip, go to your website, get the CSS file for the button, get the JavaScript file for the button, and it would do the same thing to all these other components like the paragraph, the pop-up. And this number of trips matter because it will slow down the website, right? So by combining all of them, now the visitor will only have to make one trip, get everything, and basically process it, right? But when we condense everything in one file, some problems might, appear from that. So certain code should run, ahead of other code, but it's, that's not the way it was combined, and that's why problems can happen. Now, however, I will say that whole concept of making trips computers gotten a lot stronger and better at doing multiple trips at a time. Some, browsers can now do up to 10 trips at a time, or 5 trips at a time. So it's not really a big problem in terms of like how faster and how strong computers are. Also, tools like Elementor and these other page builders have gotten better at not scatter their assets, or instead combining them by default to a way that it doesn't cause issues, because they are the author of the code. We're not combining it ourselves or using a third-party tool. It's the author of the tool that's combining the tool. So they handle the testing, they handle everything. So that's why I would say combining shouldn't be a necessary step anymore. So deferring JavaScript assets. So deferring JavaScript means delaying the loading of scripts until the main content of the page has loaded. This will allow the page to load faster and improve first content paint. It's essential to test each script, as some may need or may depend on earlier loading and could break if deferred incorrectly. So basically what it means is if you have like a script on your website, let's say Google Analytics, Google Ads, Facebook Pixel, any other script, third-party script that you injected on your website header, you might not need it in the header, or you might not need to load it when the page is loading. You can defer it actually to the bottom, so you allow the page to load first, and then you would load that script. Especially with stuff like Google Analytics, you don't really need it as the website is loading. You need to track the user after the website is loaded, right? But it's a big tool that can actually slow down the website if it's loading ahead of your website. Now, luckily, with all asset minification, combining and deferring, that could get very technical. Nowadays, we don't have to do any of that by hand, except for part where you're just testing things on the website, making sure everything looks good. But really, everything now is handled by what we call performance or caching plugins. It's as simple as just like checking boxes. You don't write any code or anything. It's just like, hey, yes, I want asset minification. Yes, I want to combine my assets. Yes, I want to defer my JavaScript. And you just activate by a checkbox and hit save, and everything will just magically get optimized. And again, these caching plugins they've all been doing it for 10 plus years, so they have really gotten really good at removing issues and blockers. So the first caching plugin is WP Super Cache. Also, we have W3 Total Cache. WP Rocket is an excellent choice. It also has some image optimization features in it. WP Fastest Cache, and also Lightspeed Cache, which I think is also completely free. Now, some of these tools are free, some of them are paid. Some of them are free and paid, like a freemium tool. So just do your research and see which one works best for you. However, I would say you should never have 2 or more performance plugins active at the same time. So again, it's a bit of a tricky area that we're minifying the assets, combining the assets, or deferring JavaScript with one performance plugin. Now, if you do 2, chances you will have a bigger problem. Also, you will have problem with your website not purging cache properly and all that. So you should always have one performance or caching plugin active at a time, and no more than that. Next chapter is caching. So caching really is the memorizing copies of the website and its files temporarily to make the website load faster. And the caching works in 2 ways. There's 2 different types of caching. So there's memorizing images and assets. Typically, that will happen on the visitor device. So their device, their computer, their phone will actually cache aspects of your website. So the next time they load their website, it will load faster, or load the website, it will load faster. Also, memorizing pre-processed copies of the website, and that's done on the server or on your website. Now, here's the first one, images and assets caching, also known as browser caching or client caching. And so basically we have the first visit here, and we have a user here. We have your website, and also we have the user storage, or their computer or their phone. So a user will basically make a request for your website to get the content of your website, and then your website will give it the HTML, will give it the images of, or the videos of the content of the website. Also, it will give it the assets, JavaScript, CSS. So the user's browser is smart enough to take those images and take those assets and store them locally on the user's device for a given amount of time, right? Like, let's say a month, 6 months, depending how it's configured and how your website kind of is configured. Because the browser knows that images and assets don't change often, right? The HTML might change, but those assets don't change very often, like the logo, right? Your hero image or your introduction section image. So they don't change very often. So instead of the browser, the next time you visit the page, it will have to make these calls and receive them again. It can store them locally, so it's faster retrieval. Now the second visit, so that was the first one, right? The browser downloaded it. Now in the second visit, the user will make the request to your website. Your website now will only send the HTML because the browser will tell it, hey, I already have the images, I already have the CSS, just give me back the content. And then it will get the images and assets from the local storage much faster. So it doesn't have to download them. The next part is pre-processed, or also known as website caching and server caching. So we have the pre-processing step, and also we have when the user is visiting the website step right there. So the pre-processing, it doesn't have to be the user first visit. Actually, it could be you when you click publish on your website or save a blog post or edit a page. That can be the action to trigger the pre-processing. So basically, we have the user here. We also have the server. Let's say your hosting is Bluehost. That is the server. And also we have your website here in the third column. But you publish a page, basically, or you publish your website, and you're basically telling the Bluehost or the server that, hey, I have published my website, or I have posted a new article or made a new product, and here's the product. Go ahead and save it or pre-process it. So basically, the server will take a look at that. It will pre-process it, meaning it will make whatever database calls it needs to do to render that content, loading the product information from the database, get the proper images right from the file system, and render everything basically. But when it does that, it will actually save a copy of the processed or the basically post-processed copy. So everything is ready, right? And then when the user visits the website, now the user doesn't even have to go to the website. As soon as they go to Bluehost, they say, hey, I want to go to xyz.com. And then Bluehost or the caching layer or the server will know, like, oh, the owner of the website told me about an hour ago to pre-process this website. So here, I have it ready for you. I have a copy of it ready for you. So it doesn't have to go back to your website and go to the database and go to the file system. Instead, everything is pre-processed. Now, if this is still blurry, I like to use the coffee shop analogy to kind of break that down. But we have a coffee shop that operates with no cash and another one operate with cash, or let's say it's the same one. But we have a customer, we have waitress, and also barista here. So the way this restaurant operate, customers sit, waitress is greeting them, they get their order, they go to the barista, and then they get them their item. However, in a no cash situation, the customer will sit, the customer will request, let's say, their most popular coffee item. The waitress will take that order, will go to the barista, and will tell them about the order. The barista will make the coffee or go to the back and make that coffee and give it back to the waitress, and the waitress will take it and give it to the customer. That's in a no cash situation. However, the barista figured out that, hey, all day long, people are asking for this specific cup of coffee. So what they do in a cash situation, they go ahead and pre-prepare a few cups and put them on the counter. So the next time a customer is asking for it, it is ready. So the customer would go ask the waitress for that popular cup of coffee. The waitress, instead of going to the barista, the waitress will only go to the counter and the coffee there and ready in a cup, in a heat-preserving cup, and take it and give it to the customer. And that all happens quickly. Now, that freed up time for the waitress. The customer is happier because they got their order faster. And also the barista now can focus on other things because they're not constantly going to the back, making the coffee and serving customers. They're making that ahead of time. So caching benefits. So the cache can temporarily store data for faster retrieval, as we saw. It also reduces server load, which speed up page load times. And also it will decrease server requests by delivering saved data to users. So popular caching plugins. So it's a very similar list to the performance plugins. They basically do both. But also we have the Bluehost plugin. So the Bluehost plugin that gets installed on your website when you sign up for a Bluehost account actually has some level of caching configured in it. But again, the same list as performance plugins: WP Super Cache, WP Total Cache, WP Rocket. WP fastest cache, and light speed cache. And again, you should never have 2 or more caching plugins active at the same time. Monitoring your website. So even when you optimize the website, that you shouldn't just forget about it. You should always go back in time and monitor it, just to make sure that it's not slowing down for one reason or another. But you should always scan your website periodically. So let's say once a month, once every 2 months. You should always scan it after big changes. If you edit a lot of content on a specific page, change the images, you should scan it again to see if something that we did have slowed down the performance of the website. You should also scan it after installing a new plugin or changing the theme, and also scan after you modify the performance plugin settings. So if you went to the caching plugin or the performance plugin and you've made few changes, you should scan it again just to make sure these changes did not break something or make the website slower. And you can use the same tools to diagnose the problems to monitor the performance, like Google PageSpeed Insights, GTmetrix, Pingdom tools, and Chrome Lighthouse. And here's our summary and next steps. So basically, we talked about fast load times yield better user experience, conversion, and better SEO, and so search engine ranking. Large images, assets, and plugins and hosting can impact speed. Optimizing images before uploading, or use image optimization tools like plugins and CDNs. Use performance or caching plugins to help with optimizing your website. And also, you should monitor your performance regularly. And remember to always take a backup of your website before optimizing it, before performing and optimizing on it. However, if you feel stuck, or you're doing a lot of things but nothing really is working, or you're not getting the results that you want, you should always Google like how to optimize WordPress websites. Or if you identify a problem using Google PageSpeed and you're not able to solve that problem for some reason, you can just copy that error line and put it on Google and see what Google recommend. Also, you can use internet forums, ask people questions. You can also use ChatGPT, Copilot, and AI. It's a great one, actually, especially now. ChatGPT and these tools can actually scan websites themselves, or they can browse the net. So you can basically get that error from Google PageSpeed, and you tell it to ChatGPT, hey, I have a problem with this specific error, and here's my website. So it can even recommend a plugin that can solve it for you. It can give you the steps necessary inside that plugin to take, so you can actually solve that problem. And again, you can always consult with a WordPress developer or a dev to help you with your website performance. All right, and now on to the Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alani. That was super, super helpful and very, very informative. Really appreciate you walking us through that. I think that's going to be very, very beneficial for a lot of people that are doing this, especially for people that are doing it for the first time. And maybe you're trying to follow a blog article that, maybe is a little bit tricky to follow. I think you really laid it out very, very simply and very easy, especially for a first timer. I do have a handful of questions that I'd like to get through. We've got about 15 or so minutes. So I think we'll be able to get through a handful of them. But real quick, before we do jump into the Q&A, I just wanted to invite everyone that's currently watching to find the Q&A or the chat and drop any questions that they might have or that might have come up. In addition to questions, I also am interested in hearing any other topics that people would like us to cover. We're going to get to Q&A in just a second, but usually I ask at the very end, and then we end the webinar shortly after that. And so I want to make sure that everyone has enough time. If there is a topic that you'd like to see us cover in future webinars, we want these to be educational and engaging for you. So please find the chat, drop what future webinars you'd like to see us cover. So without any further ado, let's jump into the questions. First question for you, Alani, is how can I tell if my images are slowing down my site?
Oh, excellent question. So when you use the Google PageSpeed or GTmetrix, they will identify the images that are unoptimized. And when you expand like the certain diagnostic metric, it will actually even point out and show you like a rendered image which one is slowing down the website, and even how you can improve it. So it will tell you like, hey, this image has a resolution of X versus Y, but really it should be X versus Y, right? Should be, you should also compress it. It's not compressed, or it's served in a PNG format. It should, be served in WebP. So these tools are really good. There's also other tools. I think Smush, the plugin, if you're logged in as an admin and you go on your homepage, you can actually point out, like put a border around. Only you will see that border, right? Because you're logged in as an admin, but it will highlight the image that is unoptimized and tells you a few steps to optimize it as well. But yeah, those are generally the steps I take.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, next question we have here. Is it better to use JPEG or PNG files for faster load times?
So really it depends on the image. So some images are better with PNG, some of them are better with JPEG, especially the ones with the transparent image, the background. They should be in PNG, right? Because PNG is known to carry a larger size, but it has better features. However, I would say with next gen image format, that's what it's called. So with WebP is probably the better solution for both. So if you're able to serve it with WebP, it's better than JPEG and PNG for the web.
Okay, awesome. The next question I have is, how do I know if my caching settings are working properly?
So that one is a tricky one. It could get technical, but each caching plugin, they have some sort of instructions to check that. So for example, like WP Fastest Cache or WP Rocket, they print out a comment on the HTML, the rendered HTML. So when you go to your website, you can click right-click, view page source. So you're reading the actual code, but you don't have to read the code. Obviously, you can just Control F or find on the page, and you just look for the word WP Rocket, and you'll see a comment from them. That means the version that you're seeing is sort of cached, right? But really, it's you optimize the caching plugin, you do whatever settings that you need to do on it, and then you run the page speed tool or GTmetrix and see if the results are improved or not. But these are generally the steps that I take, just reading the page source and checking the tools to see if the problems are fixed.
Thank you. That's a really good answer. Someone else asked, they heard you mention a CDN. I think that's for a content delivery network. And they asked, will using a CDN help with site speed?
So there's image CDN and there's just CDN. So image CDN, CDN is content delivery network. So basically it's a layer that sits on top of your website, handling the serving of the assets and images to the user. So using an image CDN will definitely help make your website faster, right? Because it's going to optimize the images to the best possible version and the lowest possible size while retaining quality. They're really good at what they do. Now, CDN, just CDN, it will do the same thing for your assets, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and such. And it's also really good if your website, if your users are coming from different places. Let's say you have users in Europe and Asia, even in the US. So CDN, they have many different servers around the globe, and they are closer to the visitors, right? But if you have a small website and your users, let's say, localize in a specific state or city or something, CDN might actually slow down the website in certain scenarios. So really, it just depends on the type of website that you have and type of traffic. But if you have a medium to large size website, CDN, just not image CDN, CDN is always a good option.
Yeah, I agree. And I know that some products with Bluehost come with a global CDN just layered into it.
So we have Cloudflare CDN that you can enable from the dashboard. You would just go to the dashboard. It's completely free, built into your Bluehost plan. Any Bluehost plan, you can just go to the website, to the settings, not WordPress, to the Bluehost dashboard, and there's an option to serve via CDN or Cloudflare.
Awesome. Okay. A few more questions here. I'm also going to advance the slides to the next one. Just if I know you covered a couple of resources if people get stuck and how they can find more information, but I just want to give a few more options for anyone that still might be looking for a little bit more guidance. Next question we have from the audience is, how can I speed up my site for mobile users specifically?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Especially we've seen that tools like Google PageSpeed and GTmetrix, they can evaluate and give you different results for mobile and desktop. So one thing I would do actually is like I would build the website, and you could build it, and then obviously you're going to look at it on the desktop view, right? But then once you're done developing the specific page or the entire website, you should go back again and take a look at it on your mobile phone and make sure everything is loading fast, right? And you don't have things like bleeding off the mobile screen or something. So basically, it's really all about testing it, right? So we usually build it and we're testing it as we're building it on a desktop, but we always forget about phones. So you should always, before you publish it to the world, you should always get the URL, put it on your phone, and look at it from your phone to make sure you don't have any problems or rendering problems on the phone. I'd say that's the biggest tip I would give.
Awesome. And I'm trying to pull up something on my other screen real quick. I know that there's a website out there. I forget what it is off the top of my head, but essentially you can put in the URL and it will automatically load that URL in like 10 different browsers, a few different mobile devices, so you can see how your website loads specifically, whether you're using Chrome or Safari or an Android or an iPhone or a Google phone, whatever it might be. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. I'll see if I can find that and bring it up before we get to the end of this, unless you know what it is off the top of your head.
I don't. I used to use it actually a long time ago, but I just been using the functionality built into the Chrome browser, like the right click and you inspect it, and it lets you see it on phone or like in a phone view. But really, all these tools do not like mirror the real experience of a phone in your hand. So they're more like a simulator, like a client simulator, right? Versus like an actual real experience.
Okay. Okay, so the next question we have here is, can using too many high resolution images slow down my site, even if they're optimized?
Yeah, definitely. At some point, if you have a lot of images, they're all, let's say, because you can only optimize it so much, right? If it's like, if the image you're uploading, you want it to be served in 1920 by 1080 because that's just the container that it's in, right? And you have multiple of them, then your page total size will actually be big. So it's just a reality that you have a big website or image or photography driven website. Now, back in the day, Google PageSpeed and GTmetrix used to really like ping you on that, or like, hey, the images or the total page size is big, so the website is slow, it's bad. But with the modern metrics, they don't ping you just for the total page size, just because they understand and respect that, hey, there's photography driven website. As long as I would say you're optimizing your images to the rendered container size and also using technologies like lazy loading images, all these CDNs and all the image and caching plugins that we covered, they all have that option as a checkbox, and you would just check it and it will automatically do its job. But basically what it does, when somebody loads your website, as they're scrolling down, or when they load the website, it doesn't load all the images automatically. It will only load the first image, the one that they're seeing. And then as they're scrolling down, let's say as soon as they're getting very close to the next image, the next image will actually start downloading from the server. As they're scrolling down more, that third image will load. So it's all smart technology that's all built into browsers and built into WordPress nowadays that you can utilize if you have a photography or images driven website.
Awesome, thank you. And I know you might have covered this a little bit. You can also try to offload them to a different application or something like that, and then just use like an iframe or something to connect the two to your website. That essentially would just be offloading some of the strain off of the server you're hosted on and put it onto a third party. Similar. Actually, I think this next question will kind of touch on what I was about to talk about, but does adding a video impact my site speed, and how can I manage this?
Yes, definitely, especially if the video is being auto-played on initial loading, right? Videos are obviously known to be larger in size than images or than text, right? So you can use few things like not auto-playing the video immediately, giving the option to the user to click play on the video. Then when they click play, the download will start. Or there's actually, like, if you're using Elementor or Breaks or any other page builder, they all are now smart enough to get around that issue by basically, even if you wanted to autoplay immediately, they will let the HTML and the page load, right? And then about a second or 2 seconds, again, just like images loading, they will play that video and start downloading that video, right? And they would even give you the option to put like some sort of a thumbnail before it, or like a layer before the video, as that, as your website taking a second or two to load, so it can finish the first content paint much faster, and then they would load that video in the background as a second step. So yeah, videos, if if not optimized, or if we don't take the proper steps, can definitely slow down the website.
Yeah, and what I was going to mention previously with images was the example of if you have a lot of videos, or if you have one really big, or if you really want to have like a 4K video. Let's say you're a drone pilot and you want to showcase some of your videos, and you want to really bring that strong detail, and you can upload them to YouTube and then embed that YouTube video onto your website. So when your website loads, it's not loading your full 4K video from the server, it's loading it from YouTube server, which is optimized to that. And it's a lot easier to just kind of slide that in from YouTube than it is to load it from the server.
And I would add also, if YouTube is giving you problems, because YouTube will load its own script sometimes, or some people just don't want to use YouTube, or whatever the reason is, you don't like the interface of it on your website. Just like image CDNs, there's a lot of video serving tools now. I think one of them called Wisita I've used in the past, and basically they allow you to create a playlist on their website, right? And then you add as many videos as you like, depending on your plan. And then they will give you like an iframe or they have Wisita have actually a WordPress plugin that you can install, and then you can put those videos on the website, but really they're being loaded from somewhere totally different. So it has zero impact on your performance, and they're extremely optimized for performance, because that's what they do. It's like a video CDN.
Yeah. And I know that's probably a little bit of a fringe case. I suspect that most people in our audience today are not drone pilots that are trying to build their 4K website, but the same goes for images, where there's ways that you can try to offload that a little bit to make your site load even faster, if that's your goal. Next question we have, and I think we only have time for maybe one or two more questions, but Alani, I really appreciate taking the time to answer all of these. Can certain themes or page builders affect my site speed?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, at the end of the day, what's printing the assets and the HTML is a theme, and the page builder, right? So they are in charge of doing that. So if the page builder is known to have optimization problems, then your website is just going to have optimization problems, right? You can install caching plugins and try to combine assets and stuff, as dangerous as it is, but that's just a reality of it, right? But I would say that most page builders, even like before, like Elementor had, Rep that it was a bit slower, right? Just the way it is, right? The way it's built. They have gotten a lot better at, in terms of performance and stuff. And caching plugins also gotten really good at working with these page builder plugins, right? Especially in the last, 2 to 3 years, in a way that even if the page builder has problems, the caching plugin can fix it. But also a lot of page builders gotten better at performance.
Okay, awesome. Let's see. Time for maybe one more question. Let's see. How can I diagnose if a plugin is causing my site to slow down? I know oftentimes I've seen this with beginners, where they just say, hey, I might want to use this plugin. I'm going to install, activate it. I might use this one, install, activate it. And then they have a ton of plugins. Their site's running slowly, and they don't know which one, if any of the plugins, are causing issues.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the nature of WordPress. The power of WordPress is in the plugins and the extensions. But again, they can bring that problem with them. And that's why I said, and once you optimize a website, you should always scan the website after you install the plugin, or install a new plugin, or change the theme, right? Just scan it again to make sure that new plugin that you added did not add new scripts that are not unoptimized on the home page or on the front pages of your website. So I would say scan after you install the plugin, really. If you're technical enough to like read the code and stuff, that could be another option to see what's happening. But really, I'd say scan the website with Google PageSpeed after installing a new plugin. Yeah.
Awesome. Let's see. I think we got time for one more. I think it's very related. How do I balance the number of plugins I use for speed without overloading my site?
Say that the question again.
Yeah. How do I balance the number of plugins I use for speed without overloading my site?
Okay, so you can have multiple plugins without, like a speed impact, especially if these plugins are optimized properly, right? So it's all really going to depend on um, the type of plugin and what impact it has on the website, and also looking for alternatives always. So for example, if you have a plugin that just does like a photo gallery, maybe look in the page builder that you're using, whether it's Elementor, Divi, Beaver Builder, to see if they have a gallery widget that you can use instead of using that plugin. Now you can eliminate one plugin off your list, right, and use the page builder. I think really just about any other page builder out there has like a photo gallery component or element. Even the WordPress block editor has it. So I would say just look for alternatives as much as possible from what you already have, and your goal should always be, the smallest number of plugins on the website as possible.
I'll maybe finish with my favorite analogy about how many plugins is too many plugins. And if you've tuned into webinars before, you might have heard me use this before. But essentially, if you're going backpacking and you're camping, what do you put in your bag? Like what are you bringing with you? Water would sure be useful. Food would definitely be useful. A tent or a place to sleep would for sure be useful. But do I need to pack my PlayStation 5? Debatable, maybe, probably. Actually, probably not. Like it's definitely a great tool, but in the context I'm going for, if what I'm bringing in my bag is going to be extra weight that I need to carry, then I'm going to be very strict about evaluating and saying, okay, is this going to be critical on my camping trip? And if it's not, I don't, I
Yeah,
don't, I don't actually need it.
yeah, good point.
But all right, we are now at time. Thank you again, Alani, for stopping by today. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for tuned in and contributed. Really, really appreciate everyone's engagement. This is super, super helpful. And thank you again. Appreciate you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.